1988.
Okay.
Right? I would guess that maybe a lot of those children had been premature babies who had very immature lungs, right? And those babies were probably more at risk to have chronic health problems, which included asthma. They needed oxygen all the time. They might have been on ventilators all the time. And back in 1988, we frankly didn't have the same kind of medications that we have now that we can give to kids. And I think we're better at making the diagnosis of asthma and more aggressively treating it. So hopefully you don't have kids in nursing homes because they have asthma.
Gotcha.
Well, going back to when we first see this disease now, I'm drawing back on my own experiences, and I remember this was just before I started school. That's when, or at least these are the first memories that I have of actually having difficulty with this disease. And you know, I remember not fully understanding what was going on, but I was definitely before. It was definitely before I started school. So we're talking about, you said 4 to 5 years of age. That's when we typically see it. Now, in terms of why you, I guess, hold back on diagnosing it early, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Because some kids get better.
Okay.
You know, some children will have a couple of bouts of wheezing when they're little, and then they get better. You know, in children who there's a strong family history, you know, everybody has asthma in the family, or in a young child who already has an allergy history, you know, maybe they have very bad eczema, maybe they've had allergies to foods when they're 1 or 2 years of age. Sometimes those children, that sort of predicts that maybe they're going to go on to continue to have asthma.
Now, I don't know if we're going to, we're going to speak about this further in the segment, but just to start it off, my understanding of asthma, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this inflammation in the lungs, your body is fighting something, and it's the buildup of a lot of mucus.
Correct.
And because of that, it's very difficult to breathe.
Right. What happens is, imagine our airways are little tubes, right? And imagine you're a little kid, right? A little baby or a young child has their tubes are the size of a dime or the size of a quarter. And that gets swollen. I always tell parents, think about what it's like when you have a cold, right? When you have a cold, what happens? Your nose gets swollen, you can't breathe through it, and you make a lot of mucus. That same thing is going on in your lungs, right? Your lungs get swollen, you make a lot of mucus, and you can breathe in because your body works really hard to help you breathe in, but then when you go to try and breathe out, everything collapses. So it's just like when you can't breathe through your nose, you can't breathe through your lungs. Same kind of thing.
Got it. So going back one more time to what we were saying with the with the young children and them and their you know
you couldn't play football.
So when we have children that do come in with wheezing, let's say the parent has another child that has asthma, should this parent be maybe a little bit more proactive in saying that, you know, look, this is wheezing, might not be a typical cold, and bring that child in for evaluation?
Right. Most of the time we make the diagnosis of asthma by our clinical exam and by the history. So the parent gives us a history of coughing at night, coughing with running around. The parent gives us a history of family history of asthma, and then we examine the child. And we listen to the child, and we hear wheezing, and sometimes we see the children having distress. You know, they are what we call retracting, like you can see their ribs moving in and out or up and down, and we say, all right, this child is wheezing. And then we may go ahead and try asthma medication, usually by an inhaler medicine or what we call a nebulizer. And if the child improves, if their work of breathing improves and we listen and they're not wheezing anymore, we know then that we have some what we call reactive airways. And again, maybe go on to have asthma. If the child is 1, we'll see what happens, and it's their first time. If it's their 5th time, we kind of sort of have the diagnosis that we have something more chronic going on.
Got it.
Now, I want to clear up, because I have a couple of myths on my paper right
here. You got myths? Okay.
Yeah, so one of them is that, especially in this community, one of the reasons why children have asthma could be 2 reasons: pollution and asbestos in the old apartments. Is that true?
That is not. Environment in the home and in our neighborhood, very important triggers of asthma. Very important. What goes on in your home is so important to why kids wheeze. It's less about asbestos and more about mold and cockroaches, vermin, dust. We find that New York City has done a lot of statistics on asthma, and we were discussing before we came on the air that poorer communities have 2 and 3 times the rates of asthma as other communities. And a lot of it has to do, some of it is inherited. We were discussing 1 in 5 Hispanic children have asthma, 1 in 6 black children have asthma. But we know that kids in poor neighborhoods like Central Harlem, East Harlem, Hunts Point, Bushwick, and Brooklyn, and we know that a lot of it is their environment. Kids live in homes that have broken windows, cracked windows, mold, cockroaches, mice. These kids have more asthma. Very important. And certainly cities, big cities, have more asthma because there's more pollution. In a city like New York, where we have all these buildings and all this stuff kind of stays in the air, we have a lot more asthma. Absolutely. Asbestos is not as much as some of these other things. Cockroaches is a bad one. Every kid who has asthma is allergic to cockroaches. Right. So it's very important in terms of the treatment of asthma. It's not only to prescribe medications, but get the home environment as best you can.
Now, my thing is, when you say allergic to cockroaches, is that because of what they carry on them? As far as, why would you say cockroaches?
Well, it's not only what they carry, but it's also, their protein and stuff.
Okay, got you.
I don't like to think about it too much, but
I never heard of that, but that's good to know. Never heard
and then we're going to talk about smoking.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the thing, and basically, we going back to what this disease is. We talked about the constriction of the airways. They tighten up. We got the mucus production, and this is all in response to, as Dr. D'Onofrio just said, it could be the proteins that are found in cockroach feces and on the cockroaches themselves. It could be proteins or other things that could be found in the fecal matter of mice. It could be dust mites. It could be all of these different things can set people off. And it might not be the same thing for each individual child, but when we talk about, the more you're exposed to, the more things that could potentially set someone off.
And mold is another one.
Mold is another
a
one.
Huge problem. Right.
So these are all things that could lead to or trigger an asthma attack.
Right.
And we're about to take a break, ladies and gentlemen, so stay with us because we're going to go more in depth with this. You're listening to Health in Harlem on WHCR 90.3 FM New York. If you wish to call in with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can call us at 212-650-6903. That's 212-650-6903. You're listening to Health in Harlem.
Oh, wait a minute. And if you are the first, I'm just going to say the first caller.
All right, there we go.
If you are the first caller, hit us off.
I'll pull out my cell phone right now.
And you will receive a prize of unspeakable value. So I'm going to keep saying this every single week.
Can I call?
I'm going to keep saying this every single week until somebody hits us off. But you know what? Someone is going to hit us off, and confetti is going to fall out the sky.
All right, there we go. You're listening to Health in Harlem. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
If you know the symptoms and get the facts, you'll know the signs of a heart attack. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if it sounds familiar, call 911.
Pain in your neck, chest,
arms or jaw,
shortness of breath.
Please tell us more. Cold sweats and nausea, tiredness.
It's time to take it
serious. Back pain, stomach pain, shortness of breath, cold sweats, nausea, dizziness. If you know the symptoms and heed the signs, you'll be around for a long, long time. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if any sound familiar, call 911.
Learn a song that could save your life. Get a free download at womenshealth.gov/heart attack.
Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if any sound familiar, call 911. If any sound familiar, call 911.
A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
911.
Este 17 de mayo contamos contigo para seguir dando más a nuestra comunidad. Necesitamos tu aporte en nuestro Radio Maratón anual desde las 8 de la mañana hasta las 8 de la noche. No falte, ven, te esperamos. Llámanos al 212-650-6903.
Hi, I'm Vinny B of the Vinny B Showcase. Tune in every Thursday from 8 to 12 midnight for some solid cultural roots music and some sweet lovers rock. Also, informative interviews and giveaways. Right here on the Vinny B Showcase every Thursday, 8 through 12 midnight on WHCR 90.3 FM. Peace.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Open up your heart. Open up your heart. You know the world is going insane. There's so much hate and pain. We need a healing. Brothers and sisters, come on, we need healing.
Welcome back to the one and only Health in Harlem on WHCR 90.3 FM New York. I'm Maurice Selby.
And this is Sean Shivers.
And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Dr. Elaine Dinolfo. She is a general pediatrician from Harlem Hospital, and we're talking about asthma tonight.
Asthma.
Critically important disease.
Especially in this community. I'm always going to keep saying
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, it is. You're right. 30% of kids in Harlem have
that.
asthma.
Yes.
And you mentioned something earlier to me, Dr. Dinolfo, before the show about how serious this disease can be. And we're talking about, ultimately, I mean, if this is not controlled, death is...
Right. I mean, some
It's something
children
I
do die from asthma. Certainly younger children and adolescents who are not in good control can die from asthma. You know? A lot of kids go to the emergency room with asthma, a huge number of ER visits every year, especially in emergency rooms in poor neighborhoods. And as I said, it's the #1 admission to the hospital for children under the age of 14. What's interesting is that we're seeing fewer admissions for asthma in the last few years because we're doing a better job about getting kids on controller medicines. But the kids that are getting admitted are sicker. We're seeing more kids in ICUs who are getting admitted. It's not quite. I'm not quite sure why that is, but we're seeing a little bit more of that. So good news and bad news.
About a couple of months ago, one of the employees in my department had a sudden asthma attack. Sent her downstairs to the ER, and in the corner of the ER, there had to be about 6 or 7 other people in the corner with these inhalers on their face.
Medications.
What was happening? Can you tell me what was happening, or especially because anybody's experience who comes to the ER and they have asthma, I'm assuming that they're going to go in that same corner also.
Right. Most emergency rooms have areas for people with asthma, and they're set up to have oxygen on the walls. And then what you are doing with the mask is it's called nebulizer, and you are giving asthma medicine with oxygen via nebulizer. Right, because a lot of times when people are having an asthma attack, their oxygen is low. That's part of why asthma is dangerous for you, right? Your oxygen goes down. And so that's the medication that they're giving.
Wow.
Right.
Because I know definitely that if you come into the ER with an asthma, and people always talk about long waits at Harlem Hospital, no, you're going straight in to the back and put on this mechanism.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Wow.
so.
Right.
So,
Again, because sometimes if you come in really, really tight, you were telling me about a patient you had, you're really tight and you don't get treated right away, you can die. Stop breathing.
And even if we're not talking about death, just going back just a little bit, where you mentioned the hospital admission rate, and I can tell you there were times where I was in the hospital for pretty much a whole week, missing a whole week of school, not at home with my family, and there's the psychological and emotional issues that you deal with being in the hospitals as a child. No child should be in the hospital. We want children to be out playing and, learning the ways of life. And when we just look at the missed school days, all of these things add up. The parents having to take off from work to stay home with the child, or somebody having to be there to watch the child. Now we're talking about loss of productivity, loss of income. So it goes far beyond just talking about, life and death, which is, of course, of the utmost importance. But when we talk about the day-to-day, how this can disrupt the day-to-day life of a family, then we're talking about how serious this disease can be economically, educationally for the child. And this is where, when we talk about classification of the disease or severity of the disease, And you mentioned control. This is why it's paramount to have control of this disease.
Well, I want to make a comment real quick, and then you can
Sure.
you can comment afterward. Is that I went to when I was at Asthma Children's Foundation. I went to a training, and they said I want everybody to be aware of what a child or someone goes through when they have an asthma attack. So they said I want you to do 20 jumping jacks. So we did 20 jumping jacks. He said, now hold your breath and don't let go. And just after a matter of, let's say, about 30 seconds, I was about to drop dead. So is that a good analogy to use when someone's having an asthma attack?
Right. Or you can take the stairs to come up here. And that'll do it. No, it's true, because what happens is you get anxious, right? You're having trouble breathing. Your oxygen's a little bit low, and you get more anxious. And the more anxious you get, the harder it is for you to breathe. And especially in older kids, that anxiety is really there. Little ones don't really know it. They
or
just
that fear,
breathe
I guess
fast.
it's like a fear.
Right, and you have a fear, that I can't breathe, and you're gasping for air, and that's absolutely what it feels like. Yeah. And you want to avoid that. And you're absolutely right. You shouldn't be sitting in a hospital a week. You should be in school. You should be in school. You should be playing your sports and doing all your activities. If it means you have to take medicine every day, then so be it. You have to take medicine every day, but medicine shouldn't prevent you from doing things. It should help you to do things.
That's right. So when we talk about management of this disease, and improving some of these things, making sure that the child can go to school on a how effective can the treatment be? Like, if we have control of it, how effective can?
If we do it right, it should be very effective. And every child is different. Every child is different. Every family is different. So we actually have, we were discussing criteria. The National Heart, Lung, Blood Institute has come up with a sort of algorithm for doctors to use to help them manage children with asthma. And it's a little bit arbitrary, because you ask a lot of questions of their parent. How many days does your child cough? How many days does your child wake up at night? How many times a week do you have to give him his short-acting albuterol? But it gives us an idea of how chronic the child's illness is, and then you figure out medication to manage him.
Got it.
And the whole point is getting the child under control so that he's not coughing every night of the week, that he's, not missing school. And the schools, here in New York City, there's been a big push by the Board of Education to have asthma programs in the school, to have everyone educated about asthma, so that kids can bring their asthma inhaler to school and stay in school all day. So these are all good things. And so each kid is different. You have to figure out what's going to work for him, what medications will work, what medications won't work, what the parent is able to do, whether the child can use an inhaler, whether a younger child needs a nebulizer, all these different kinds of things. But what you do is you work with the patient, you work with the family, and you figure out what's the best, regimen of medications that's going to work for him, so he can go have his life.
All right, that's what I'm talking about.
I want to clear up. I'm going to throw another myth out there. One of the myths is saying is that if you or your child is having an asthma attack, give them a cup of hot tea.
If you or your child is having an asthma attack, you give your child or yourself medication. If you don't get better after 20 minutes, you pick up the phone or you come to the emergency room.
Gotta clear that up.
That makes perfect sense.
Have you heard that before by any chance?
Tea, honey. Honey is good for kids who cough, who don't have asthma. But if you're coughing because you're having asthma, you have to take your asthma medicine.
Got you.
Okay.
And one of the things that Sean brought up earlier was I think sometimes people fear the wait, not even the hospital itself, but just being in the emergency room, having to wait around. And
they don't want to go.
And people do not want to go to the emergency room, which is totally understandable. And you know what? For certain things can wait till tomorrow. And we talked about the colds and the runny noses and a little bit of wheezing that young children can have with viral infections. And guess what? That can wait until you go to your primary care physician, maybe the next day. That can wait for sure. And actually, if the parent is really confident and understands these colds and they know their child, they won't have to go to a primary care physician at all, because a lot of those subside on their own. However, when we talk about asthma, we talk about something that is potentially emergent at any given moment. And if if this is not controlled, if we don't get the right treatment at the right time, we could have some serious complications as a result. And this is why this is a truly emergent disease. And Sean, you did point out that there's sort of an express line in the emergency room that any child coming in with asthma or symptoms consistent with asthma, these children are on the express track versus everyone else in the emergency room.
But if we get our kids on the right meds, and if we teach the children and teach parents how to manage mild asthma attacks, and the parents can learn, anything. And kids older, especially as kids get older, they can learn to know their own body and know when they're really sick. You can manage some asthma at home, but that's only if you have a good relationship with your doctor, with your primary care doctor, or the person who takes care of you with your asthma. Some kids see a specialist. And that you are a very well-educated parent about managing your kids' asthma. Sometimes you can do some things at home, but most kids who are having a bad asthma attack, no tea, emergency room. No tea, emergency.
And I just want to give credit to my mom if she's listening because I think she was good. In terms of managing my asthma, not only did she have the information, and this is where we can see what we were talking about in terms of being ready to deal with this disease and having the right information, because she would do certain things that, one thing for sure, if the nebulizer treatment or my inhaler didn't work initially after, a certain amount of time or after a couple of treatments, then we were on our way to the emergency room. That was a fact. That was hands down, no matter what time of day it was. If it was in the middle of the night, which a lot of asthma attacks occur in the middle of the night, we were on our way if those treatments didn't work. So occasionally, and we can talk about triggers because a little more too.
The question I was like, as you gotten older, do you have less attacks or no attacks at all?
For the most part, I grew out of it. However, certain things, one of my main triggers when I was younger was cold, dry air, which to this day, if I'm exerting myself in cold, dry air, I'll still feel my chest tighten up sometimes. And it might not be as severe as it was when I was younger, but that still happens. And remember, we were talking about hyper responsiveness of the airways. That doesn't necessarily go away completely as you get older. It might get a little better, but it doesn't completely go away.
Well, actually, I'm going to do a flip real quick. Recently, I just went to my primary care physician, and because it felt like I've been wheezing, and they had told me to try an inhaler. But then they're going to monitor. So now I'm just going to say you kind of sort of grew out of it. And I get the feeling, hasn't been diagnosed yet, that I'm starting to
develop it.
And
yeah, sometimes that can happen, that you can get asthma as an adult. I had my first asthma attack when I was 30.
Oh, wow.
It can happen. Sometimes it's something that just, maybe you've gotten one of these viruses that's flying around and that's why you're wheezing with it. But it is true that sometimes people do get it when they're adults. But it is more common to have it when you're a child and maybe get better as you get older. But most of the time you're always a little susceptible to every once in a while having an asthma attack.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Health in Harlem on Whcr 90.3 FM New York, the voice of Harlem. You can call us at 212-650-6903. That's 212-650-6903. And you can even hit us up on Facebook. Type in Health in Harlem in the search box on Facebook.
Bam.
Sean and I will pop up right there with our bad boy pose. And you can leave and you can leave your questions, comments, or concerns right there, and we'll try our best to address them before the show's end. So keep that dial right there. We'll be right back. This is Health in Harlem on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Earthquake Entertainment presents the live concert series on Friday, May 3rd at 8 p.m. The live concert series will feature live African drums and dance by Dar Essence. Enjoy an exciting evening with special guest Day as he performs your favorite hits from the 90s to the present. That's the live concert series held on Friday, May 3rd at the Oberia Dempsey Theater. Doors open at 7:30 p.m. Show starts at 8 p.m. The Oberia Dempsey Theater is located at 127 West 127th Street between Lenox and 7th Avenues. For tickets and more information, call 917-364-8053. That's 917-364-8053. Or visit www.earthquake-ent.com.
Hi, I'm Vinny B of the Vinny B Showcase. Tune in every Thursday from 8 to 12 midnight for some solid cultural roots music and some sweet lovers rock. Also, informative interviews and giveaways. Right here on the Vinny B Showcase every Thursday, 8 through 12 midnight on WHCR 90.3 FM. Peace.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Broken homes and families struggle to survive. Children of abuse.
Welcome back to Health in Harlem, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Maurice Selby.
And this is Sean Shivers.
And tonight we have with us Dr. Elaine Dinolfo from Harlem Hospital. She's a pediatrician, and we're talking about asthma tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get back to our conversation, I just have a brief announcement to make. Now, before we informed you about the typical times of the year when the hospitals or even the state as a whole is short on blood, and ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching that time.
Again.
And that is why next week there is a blood drive, May 9th, next Thursday, 2013. There will be a blood drive at Harlem Hospital, and they want you to come out and donate your blood. They want you to roll up your sleeve and donate blood to help others in your community who suffer from sickle cell disease, blood disorders, and other potentially life-threatening conditions. The blood drive will be held at Harlem Hospital, and the main entrance is on 135th Street and Lenox Avenue, right across the street from the Schomburg Center. The New York City Blood Center staff will be set up in the second floor gallery of the hospital. Yep. This is the Martin Luther King Pavilion. And the actual donation itself takes about 10 minutes.
That's it.
However, the benefits can last a lifetime for another individual. So bring a friend, make a difference together. And guess what? You get snacks at the end of it.
You said
get
free?
like sun chips and stuff, huh?
Free.
Free.
Yes.
Totally free. Sun chips,
I love
apple
that
juice.
word.
That's my favorite part, actually.
Breakfast.
So remember, we have this blood drive next week, Thursday, May 9th, 2013 at Harlem Hospital. 135th Street and Lenox Avenue in the second floor gallery. You can register at 212-939-1327, or you can even walk in to donate. Remember, you can call 212-939-1327, or just walk in to donate some blood. All right. So getting back to our conversation, we kind of talked about it briefly before the break. I was talking about my own experiences and how my mother was always ready, not just for myself, but my brother. She knew the triggers, our triggers. She knew what to do if we even started to wheeze, like how to deal with those issues. And you know, I'm here talking to you all now, so that's right. Things worked out. Yes. So now let's talk about
Mother's
crafting. And yes, Mother's Day is coming, and I got that in my head. Definitely gotta be ready for that. And let's talk about the asthma action plan, because that is so critical in the management of this disease.
Children who have more persistent symptoms, right? You want to put them on medication to control their asthma, okay? And the main medication that we use are steroids that the children inhale through either the machine, the nebulizer, or through a pump. And these medicines are very, very important because they go right into your airways, right where all that inflammation is, and they relieve the inflammation.
Got it.
And I know sometimes parents, they hear the word steroid and they don't want to give it to their child. But it actually is very small doses of medication. It goes right to where it needs to go. And it's very important in controlling these symptoms. Very little side effects. You know, sometimes when children are really sick, we have to give them steroids by mouth. Okay? And those are bigger doses of the medication. And they can, if you have to take them for a long period of time by mouth, cause side effects. But most of the time, the medicines that we take by the pump or the nebulizer don't cause any significant side effects in children, and they have a great benefit in controlling the symptoms. So that's a very important medication. Some children who have a lot of allergies, what we call allergic rhinitis, runny noses, like we're seeing it now with the pollen count, some of those children benefit from other allergy medications and that can secondarily help their asthma. So these are very important medicines that kids should take every day.
Yes.
And then when they do get sick, because, you know, they're going to get sick, right? They're going to go to school and someone's going to give them a virus, or they might go to the neighbor and kiss a cat and have asthma. Then those other medications like albuterol, the short-acting medications, can be used. And so it's very important for a child and a family, the child, the parent, the kid, to have an asthma action plan where everything is written out for them. I have to take this medicine this morning and this medicine this afternoon. And when I start to feel a little bit sick, I'm going to take my albuterol. And then if I get sicker, I'm going to take my albuterol more often. And so everything is written there so that you have a plan and you know what you're supposed to do with your child's asthma, or the child learns what he has to do with his asthma.
Now, I had mentioned earlier about one of my employees who had to go to the emergency room because she was having an asthma attack. She didn't have her pump on her. Now, from my experience, and from my experience of what I witnessed, I want to say TV, you know, individuals who start to have an asthma attack, you see them grab that pump and they take 2 hits of it and then they're good. You never actually see somebody ever having an asthma attack and then go to the emergency room. At what point, at what point would you use the inhaler, and then at what point would you necessarily
go to the ER?
When you're about to drop dead? I mean,
well, again, you would use this is something that you teach the parent, and it also depends on the child. Every child is different. There are some kids who they're fine, and then they very quickly get very sick with asthma. Some kids are like that. Other children, you get to know, if I give my child an albuterol treatment and then maybe a half an hour later I give him another one and I'm watching him and I know he's okay, you can do some of that at home. Usually what we say, if you give the child 2 treatments within 20 minutes or within a half an hour and your child is not better, then you seek medical attention.
Gotcha.
And I think, you know, it can be very clear as to when it's time to go, because the child will let you know, or you'll see from the distress in the child that it is time to go. Yeah. Because I remember, you know, there were times when, yes, or most times, the vast majority of times, my inhaler worked or the nebulizer treatment worked, right. And I would feel much better after having those medications. However, there were other times where it was like I felt even tighter sometimes, or I would feel a little bit better for a small amount of time, but then I would tighten right back up and have more difficulty breathing. And you can tell by looking at the child, and even from my experiences in seeing my brother struggle with the disease as well, there is clear in the vast majority of cases when it's time to go to the emergency room, because you will not get better and you need a more intense treatment, or even just the monitoring in a controlled environment.
Right, and that's a very important point, because if you give the child the albuterol, or maybe you give 2 and the child is better, and then a half an hour later he's really sick again, you don't want to fool around, right? You should take the child in. What happens a lot of times with our teenagers, our adolescents, this is why they can get sicker, is because they'll sit there and they'll use their pump every 20 minutes, every hour, every 3 hours, and they don't tell anybody, and then they get really, really sick with their asthma, you know. So again, it's all about the asthma action plan. You and your pediatrician, you sit down, you discuss everything. This is what we're going to do, and this is when we're going to call the doctor, or this is when we're going to go to the emergency room.
Can a child actually OD, or can someone OD because they inhaled
overdose on the
pump? Is that possible?
You don't really get an overdose, but one of the things that happens is a lot of these medications are based on our own natural things. Like albuterol is very similar to our own adrenaline. Okay, and we sometimes, people who are really sick, from the emergency room, we give epinephrine. Epinephrine is in us. Steroids are based on we make steroids, our own natural steroids in our own body, so these medications are based on that. So what happens if you overuse your albuterol or use it over and over and over again, you get your heart rate, you start racing.
Yes.
So your heart rate, goes way, way up. You actually can sometimes feel like your chest is tighter just because you're so anxious from this. So it's not really an overdose. But the other thing is it starts losing its effectiveness, right? Do it 10 times, it's not going to work anymore.
And so that's what becomes really important. Dr. D'Onofrio mentioned earlier that, when a person starts to use the inhaler more and more, and going back to the teenagers too, if you realize that I've been using this inhaler more than I typically do, then it might be time to go to the emergency room or even to your primary care physician to restructure the medications.
A lot of teenagers don't
tailor
like
it. I know, that's true. That's so true.
Gotcha.
So let's talk about some of the misconceptions that we talked about on activity,
actually,
because
I know the next thing I was going to say, because I have a myth right here. I do have a myth.
Okay, what's your myth?
Well, the myth
Are we
myth
going
is
to talk about the Loch Ness monster too? We're just going to talk about
Bigfoot. Hey,
Bigfoot.
No, basically
the Knicks can win in 5.
Hey, oh man, please.
It's basically that if I have asthma, if a person has asthma, they cannot do any strenuous activities or they can't play sports at all. Is that
the exact opposite for most kids? We want kids who have asthma to exercise. We want them to get out and run around and
seriously?
do all their
Okay.
and live their life. Absolutely. Absolutely. They shouldn't be in hospitals, Now, if you have really severe asthma, there may be certain sports that you can't play, but most children who have mild to moderate asthma should do everything. As a matter of fact, we encourage them to get out and run around and open up their airways and do things. You may have to take your medication before you play a sport, but you should do it.
So
there are some kids who only have what we call exercise-induced asthma. People don't really understand quite what that's about, why exercise in some children triggers a spasm. But some kids do that, and that's not a very common thing. It's less common, but there are some people who are like that. Most kids who have a little bit of asthma underlying, and then when they exercise, you're gonna cough more. You may even wheeze a little bit. But if you take your medications and you're in good control, you should be able to do your activities.
Would you probably say that the exercise strengthens your lungs, or does that make sense?
Exercise does what?
Strengthen your lungs or make your lungs stronger?
It makes you stronger, because now a lot of times what happens is people will try exercising, right? And they'll get short of breath and they'll huff and puff and they think they're having asthma. But a lot of times it's just because they're out of shape, right? No,
true. Let's be real. Yeah.
No, I mean,
no, that's true. Yeah.
And even kids sometimes, the kid will decide, I want to go out for the basketball team or I want to play football, and they haven't even run around the block once. So you want the child to build up, right? If you want to play, especially a running sport, right? If you want to play basketball or soccer or football, you want to build yourself up, and usually if you build yourself up. You won't feel that sense. Now, everybody gets a little winded when you do anything.
That's right. Yep.
But there's a difference between being winded and really feeling like you can't catch your breath. So, again, it's something to discuss with your pediatrician or whoever's managing your asthma. But no, kids should get out. The whole point is to not be home sitting on your nebulizer. You should be out. You should be in school every day.
Yes.
You should be going to gym, running up and down the basketball court, doing whatever.
And with well-controlled asthma, if we talk about we got the asthma action plan in place, we understand our triggers, this is possible. And we'll talk more on that when we come back. You're listening to Health in Harlem on Whcr 90.3 FM New York, the voice of Harlem. One last time, ladies and gentlemen, you can call us at 212-650-6903. That's 212-650-6903. Don't be shy. And if you want, we can ask the question for you. You don't have to go on the air, because I know that's something that some people are a little hesitant to do. But we do want to address your concerns. We want to address your questions. You're listening to Health in Harlem. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
love jazz. The whole world knows I love jazz.
Listen up, jazz fans. I want you to get excited about your love for jazz. This is Dee Ramey, host of I Love Jazz, a new music and talk show where jazz fans meet to spread their love for jazz. Put I Love Jazz on your jazz calendar every 2 weeks on Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. And tune in to hear a WHCR exclusive, the I Love Jazz fan theme song. The Jazz Challenge is on. There is no greater love for jazz than Uptown in Harlem. The future of jazz is in your hands. Reach for I Love Jazz at WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
Shooby-dooby, I love jazz. I love jazz. The whole world knows I love jazz. Oh yeah.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Welcome back to Health in Harlem, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Maurice Selby.
And I am Sean Shivers.
And tonight we have Dr. Elaine Denolfo from Harlem Hospital. She's a general pediatrician, and she is telling us what we need to know about asthma. Now, right before the break, we were talking about the misconception that children with asthma can't be out there playing in the fields, playing in the park, and enjoying themselves, but that is the complete opposite. And one thing I wanted to add to that was we still want to be aware of our triggers, because I remember growing up, and even today to a certain extent, my trigger, as I said earlier, was cold, dry air. And I was on the track team in high school. I'd be perfectly fine working out with the rest of the team, going to the meets, participating, playing football as well in high school, and didn't have that many problems. However, when it was, 30 degrees, 25 degrees, and it was dry outside, dry out there, and we'd be running around, I would feel that tightness coming on again. So we do want to be aware of those triggers. But remember, if we got the action plan in place, the asthma action plan, and we know our triggers, we can still be active. We don't have to limit our children. So that's something that's major. Now, speaking about triggers, let's talk about one of the ultimate triggers and something that is pretty much modifiable. We talked about some of the other triggers, the roach infestations, the mice, and these are things that sometimes, and let's be real, here in Central Harlem, these are things that it's out of some people's control, in terms of these issues that we're dealing with, the waste disposal plants and the fumes that are coming over in the atmosphere. But when we talk about smoking, this is something that can be adjusted in terms of lifestyles. So can you talk about the influence of smoking on asthma?
Right. So in adolescents and adults who smoke, you just, trashing your airway. You are taking in a multitude of chemicals that are going to trigger asthma, besides all the other things they're going to do to your lungs directly. When we talk about children who are in households with asthma, there are a lot, in households with people who smoke, smoke is a huge trigger of asthma. Upper respiratory tract infections, ear infections, all kinds of things related to smoking. And parents will say, I don't smoke in the house, or I smoke in the bathroom, or I blow the smoke out the window. Well, the smoke is on you, right? It's on your clothes. It's in your hair. You pick up your child. You hug your child. He or she is smelling that stuff.
Isn't there a commercial on that, or a public service announcement through Bloomberg about that?
God, Bloomberg has.
Yeah,
tons of them.
He really has an anti-smoking campaign that I personally admire, because
Same here.
I really admire some of those things. I mean, of course, he has
his healthcare initiatives as a whole. I could say this is
a lot of them are really good.
Yes.
So and also a lot of our parents in Harlem are very young adults. So for their own health, you're 20 years old and you're smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day and you have a child, you need to quit smoking. And there are lots of ways to do that. Harlem Hospital has a wonderful, smoking cessation program.
Yes.
There are patches. There is gum. There are all kinds of
electronic
ways
cigarettes.
to quit smoking. If you want to make the effort to do that.
That's right.
So smoking around your child is just not good. Now what we do tell some parents who are trying to quit is, if you're going to smoke outside the house, the minute you come in the house, you got to take your clothes off.
That's right.
Your clothes reek of smoke, and you should actually get in the shower, and then pick up your child. But quitting smoking is really the best way.
And it's a challenge, and that's one thing that we acknowledge, right? This is a challenge for the parent. However, this is something that it just has to be done. And we have the support systems here in the city. We got the 311 hotline. As Dr. D'Onofrio said, we have, yes.
Well, you know what? I mean, you make a very good point, but one thing is knowledge. Like, a lot of the stuff that you're saying right now, I wasn't even aware of. I know there's probably a lot of parents out there who's not even aware of this. And that's and then, as we always say, as far as this radio show, as far as we are informing the public. Bloomberg is informing the public, because I think a lot of times the parents just don't even know.
And I mean, listen, it's not easy to quit smoking. My dad was a 2-pack-a-day smoker. And I still have nightmares about when he quit smoking. It's very difficult to quit smoking. But now you have lots of ways to help you, and it's really worth it. It's worth it for your child's health, and it's worth it for your own health. As a parent, you have to be there for your child growing up. You need to quit.
And look at it, if we look at it from an economic standpoint, one thing you save one.
Is it? I
don't even know.
Isn't it $11.20? I think it's $11 and something cents now.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, and
also about to change the age. You can't. You have to be 21, or I guess there's legislation going on now. You have to be 21.
They want it to be 21. But also think about it. There's less sick days for the child because there will be less asthma exacerbations. You save money per pack that you don't buy. So this could be very, very beneficial. And also, let's talk about the health of the parent as well. You'll be there. You'll be around to take care of your child as they grow up. You'll have less chance of developing hypertension, less chances of a stroke, less chance of a heart attack, less chances of lung cancer down the line. You'll actually be able to see your child grow up and flourish. So this is something that'll benefit everyone as a whole. And we just want you to take that step. Take that step.
So if there are parents out there right now who's listening, and they do
including marijuana, Rule. Sorry, I had to throw that in.
Right. Just cigarettes. Right?
Yeah. If there's parents out there right now who do want to make their change or just need that support or that help, who could they call? What could they do? Support groups, anything like that?
There's support groups from smoking cessation. Like I said, Harlem has a smoking cessation. Harlem Hospital has one. 311. New York State Smokers Quit Line. You can get free patches, free gum. I mean, there's a lot of ways if you really want to do it to help you quit.
Now, what's the number at Harlem Hospital they want to call?
The smoking cessation is 212-939-8222.
That's 939-8222. 8222. You can't forget those numbers.
No, you cannot. And also, speaking of support groups, there's also an asthma support group.
Right. Harlem Hospital, our former chairman, Dr. Vincent Hutchinson.
Yes, Dr. Hutchinson.
Chairman, Dr. Hutchinson.
He is the man.
He is the man.
He was on the show before, yep.
Right. He initiated the Harlem Initiative for community outreach for children in Harlem with asthma. And they took leadership in getting the bus depots cleaned up and doing a lot of things for the environment.
Excellent.
And so we have this asthma outreach program called Asthma Initiative and Relief, AIR, A-I-R. And basically it's a community outreach program available to all children and families with kids up to the age of 17. And it offers educational services, and it offers help in terms of the home environment. It's really meant to be home-based. So a community outreach person goes into the home, does an assessment, looking for triggers, looking for mold, seeing how we can help the parent improve the quality of the home the child is living in. They do education, reviewing how you use your nebulizer, how you use your pump and your spacer, going over the medication the child is taking. They also will go into the schools and help the school and the school nurse manage your child's asthma.
Got it.
And they also help with referrals, and they also do some pro bono legal work. And you're in the program for a year, and you meet quarterly. Now, there are some parents who don't want people coming into their home. You can also participate by just meeting with the worker and doing the educational part of it and those other things.
Got it.
If you're hesitant to have someone come into your home. And it's open to everybody in this part in Central Harlem if you would like to participate in that.
So how would a
Your
parent
doctor
get in touch
can
with
refer
someone?
you, and there's actually a number that they can call.
Yes.
646-545-2263.
What's that number again?
646-545-2263.
Take advantage.
All right.
Take advantage.
It's a great program.
You
So-
know what?
For kids.
I've learned, and you hear the word asthma every day, but I've learned so much about what asthma is right now.
And how we can get control of it as well.
And one thing that we always say, I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's all right.
Is that we haven't said in a long time, don't be stingy. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? All this valuable information, share it with your friend, your counterpart, someone you see on the train or the bus.
Well,
walking down the street.
at the water cooler
Hey,
tomorrow. You got nothing
that's
else
the
to talk about. The
conversation.
Knicks ain't win, so
Hey.
you might as well talk
about asthma.
talk about asthma. No, but for real, there are people out there, and I know that there's somebody in the listening audience that knows of a person in their family that might have asthma. They might have asthma themselves, or you know of a coworker, a friend, a colleague that has a child with asthma. Somebody out there knows somebody with asthma, and just going out there and say, yo, you know what I heard on the radio last night, man? You know, it could be
Or telling their
you
kids,
smoking outside on your stoop and then going into the house. And when we take our smoke breaks, you could be hurting your kid, you know, and
Or telling their kids
that
they can't
reaching
play
out.
sports.
Yeah.
Something like
So-
that when they really can.
So all of these, we can all help each other out. It takes a community, right? What do they say? It takes a village to raise a child.
It's a village to raise
Well,
a
guess
child.
what? This is the village. We're talking right now and talking to the village. So go out and spread the wealth with this knowledge. Now, as we wrap up, Dr. D'Onofrio, what is the most important thing that our listening audience needs to take away from tonight's show?
That asthma is a disease that you live with, that you can control. Okay, and that if you have a good relationship with your pediatrician, that your kids can go out and have a healthy life, and a happy life,
And have that action plan
and
in
have
place.
that asthma action plan, and get your flu shot when
Oh,
you need
yes,
to. We forgot flu
yes.
shots. Get your flu shot when you need to, and talk about asthma with your doctor.
Sounds like a plan. So we want to thank you very much for
pleasure.
joining us tonight,
My
and
pleasure.
we need you to come back.
Oh,
A downstate alum,
anytime.
ladies and
That's
gentlemen.
right. We got to stick together.
And also want to thank my man Sean Shivers
I
at the
wanna thank my
board.
boy Mo.
You're welcome, my brother. It's my
Thank you.
pleasure to
Come
be
back.
here
Some
every
love. Thank you,
single
brother.
week.
Yeah.
And just want to make this last announcement. Inspector Rodney Harrison, commanding officer of the 32nd Precinct, is initiating a mentorship opportunity for high school-aged youths ranging from 15 to 18 years of age. Chosen mentees will be given the opportunity to shadow Inspector Harrison throughout his day-to-day duties, attend Harlem community meetings, and experience an intimate knowledge of the operations of a police department. The program will run monthly, and new candidates will be selected at the beginning of each cycle. Upon completion, candidates will have access to a letter of recommendation from the inspector, and they can use this for all of their future endeavors. All prospective candidates will be asked 3 to 4 questions over a phone interview. So this is really simple to get involved in. If you're interested or know somebody that's interested, call 212-690-6337. That's 212-690-6337 between the hours of 2 and 3:30 p.m. Now, real fast, we got to thank Valerie Wright. We would not have Dr. D'Onofrio without Valerie Wright.
Is,
And she's the
That's my
pediatric
girl.
resource coordinator.
Whether she know it or
She's
not.
great.
We talk every day via email.
For real, man.
do.
Thank you very much, Miss Wright.
That's my girl.
This show